The clock on the platform was stuck at 11:14 p.m. when the train arrived. It wasn't supposed to. The 11:15 express disappeared 50 years ago. It went into the Blackwood Tunnel and never came out. But tonight, I heard it. The whistle came first, long, wrong, like something screaming through metal. Then the train pulled in, and every door opened at once. The clock on the platform at Oakhaven Station has been stuck at 11:14 p.m. for half a century. I know this because my grandfather was the station master who went mad waiting for the 11:15 express to arrive on March 12, 1976. It never did. It vanished into the mouth of the Blackwood Tunnel, 3 miles north of here, and simply ceased to exist. Until tonight. I am the night watchman now, a job I took out of a morbid sense of inheritance. At exactly 11:14 p.m., the air began to hum. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was a vibration in the marrow of my bones. Then came the whistle, a long, mournful shriek. Out of the fog, the 11:15 express groaned into the station. It didn't look like a wreck. It looked preserved. The silver siding of the carriages gleamed under the flickering sodium lights, and the steam from the engine smelled not of coal, but of something sweet and rotting. The doors didn't slide open, they exhaled. A hiss of cold white vapor spilled onto the platform, curling around my boots like grasping fingers. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I stepped forward. I had to. 50 years of my family's grief was idling on those tracks. "Hello?" I called out. My voice felt thin, swallowed by the silence of the woods. I stepped into the first carriage. The interior was pristine. The velvet seats were a deep, bruised purple, looking as though they'd been installed yesterday. But the smell hit me immediately. A thick, cloying scent of ozone and stagnant water. And then I saw the passengers. They weren't skeletons. They weren't ghosts. They were... paused. A man in a pinstripe suit sat with a newspaper frozen mid-fold. The date on the masthead was March 12, 1976. A woman sat across from him, her hands suspended in the air as if she were about to tuck a stray hair behind her ear. Their skin was the color of parchment, stretched tight over their features. But as I drew closer, I realized they weren't breathing. Their eyes were wide open, staring at nothing, pupils dilated so large they were just black voids. "Can you hear me?" I whispered, reaching out to touch the man's shoulder. The moment my finger brushed his wool coat, his head snapped toward me. It wasn't a natural movement. It was the jerky, mechanical twitch of a broken doll. His jaw unhinged, dropping far lower than a human jaw should, and a sound came out. Not a voice, but the recorded sound of the train's own engine, a rhythmic sound that vibrated from his throat. I stumbled back, my boots thudding against the floorboards. As I moved, the other passengers began to turn. The woman, the child in the corner with his hoop and stick, the elderly couple, all of them snapped their necks toward me with synchronized cracks. They didn't stand up, they just watched. And then the man with the newspaper spoke. His voice was a collage of 100 different screams, layered over the sound of grinding metal. "Is it time to go home?" You are home," I stammered, backing toward the door. "It's been 50 years. The man's black void eyes seemed to pulse. "Time is a circle," he droned. "We have been in the tunnel. The tunnel is hungry. It fed on the seconds, the minutes, the years. Now it needs more." Suddenly, the doors slammed shut. The hiss of the brakes sounded like a laugh. The train wasn't just a machine anymore. The walls began to ripple, the velvet seats turning into something that felt alarmingly like flesh. The windows didn't look out onto Oakhaven Station anymore. They looked out into a swirling violet abyss where the stars were jagged and wrong. I ran for the back of the carriage, slamming my weight against the door to the next one. It opened, and I tumbled into the dining carriage. Here, the horror was worse. The food on the tables was still steaming, but it wasn't food. On the plates lay heaps of gray, translucent larvae that pulsed in time with the train's heartbeat. The waiter stood in the center of the aisle, his uniform fused to his skin, his face a smooth expanse of flesh with no eyes, only a wide circular mouth filled with needle teeth.
"Ticket, please,"
he gurgled. I didn't have a ticket. I had a flashlight and a heavy ring of station keys. I swung the keys at his head, and instead of blood, a thick black oil sprayed out. It hissed where it touched the floor, eating through the metal. I scrambled over the tables, the passengers' hands reaching out to grab my ankles. Their fingers were cold, colder than ice, a cold that felt like it was sucking the very heat out of my blood. I kicked free and dove into the sleeper carriage. I saw my grandfather. Not the old, broken man who died in a sanitarium, but the young man he was supposed to be. He was sitting in a compartment, staring at a pocket watch. But he wasn't looking at the time. He was looking at his own reflection, which was aging and rotting in real time. His skin would slough off, revealing bone, then knit itself back together in a grotesque cycle of rebirth and decay. "Grandpa," I sobbed. He looked up. His eyes were the only human thing left in this nightmare. "Run, boy," he wheezed. "The train doesn't return things, it only trades them." The floor beneath me began to tilt. The train was accelerating, screaming into a darkness that wasn't part of our world. I turned and ran back toward the engine, my lungs burning. The passengers were standing now, their movements fluid and terrifyingly fast. They moved like shadows, gliding through the aisles. I reached the engine room. The boiler wasn't filled with coal. It was a gaping maw of white fire, and inside, I could see the faces of everyone who had ever gone missing in the Blackwood Tunnel, their features melting into one another. The pressure was building. I grabbed the emergency brake lever, but it wasn't metal. It was a bone, warm and slick. I pulled with everything I had. The train shrieked, a sound of pure celestial agony. The world turned inside out. I felt my skin stretching, my memories being pulled out of my head like long threads of silk. I saw the 50 years I hadn't lived yet flashing before my eyes, being consumed by the furnace. Then, silence. I woke up on the tracks, the morning sun stinging my eyes. The 11:15 express was gone. The station was empty, the woods quiet. I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled, spotted with age. My hair, which had been black when I started my shift, hung in white wisps around my face. I walked back to the station office and looked in the mirror. A 70-year-old man stared back at me. I checked the Oakhaven Gazette. The date was March 13th, 2026. Only one night had passed for the world, but 50 years had been taken from me. I sit on the platform now, every night at 11:14 p.m. I'm the old man people point at and whisper about. They think I'm waiting for a ghost. But I'm not waiting. I'm listening. And I can still hear the whistle calling for its next passenger.